Iranian media announcing that Iran had fired live missiles toward the Strait of Hormuz.
Channel through which a fifth of the world's oil, not to mention much of its fertilizer and gas, were targeted by suspected Iranian drones.
Destroy Iranian offensive missiles, destroy Iranian missile production.
5:14 local time, Strait of Hormuz. Right now, dawn is sliding across flat black water between Oman and Iran, and the sea looks almost harmless. Tankers are moving in disciplined columns. A U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon is finishing a surveillance leg above the shipping lanes. Two Super Hornets are sweeping ahead, another pair trailing wide, their radars quiet, their pilots scanning a horizon painted gold. Less than 21 nautical miles separate the choke point's narrowest edges. Nearly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil passes through this corridor. Calm surface, global stakes, and 11 seconds from now, that calm is gone. The first sign is invisible to everyone below. A plume blossoms on the Iranian coast near Bandar-e-Jask, hot enough for American infrared warning satellites to catch almost instantly. One launch. Not artillery, not a drone. But too fast, too bright, too clean. A modified Qadr-series ballistic missile, fired on a lofted trajectory designed to dive toward aircraft operating over the strait. A weapon built from a real missile family, but in this hypothetical scenario adapted for one purpose: shock, spectacle, and a message written in fire. The men aboard the Poseidon don't see it yet. The civilian crews on the tankers don't see it. The families waking up in Bahrain, Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Bandar Abbas don't see it. But the machines do, and when the machines see it, history has a way of accelerating. Imagine you're here. You're strapped into the left seat of an F/A-18E at 24,000 feet. Your oxygen mask tastes dry. Your cockpit glows green and amber. Beneath you, merchant hulls crawl through one of the most sensitive waterways on Earth. To your north, Keshem Island, Arleigh Island, the Iranian littoral bristling with radar sites, missile batteries, fast attack craft, and layers of coastal defense networks the Revolutionary Guard has spent years perfecting. To your south, open lanes toward the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, where U.S. and allied naval forces keep watch because they have to. Because if this waterway closes, markets convulse, governments panic, insurers spike premiums, and energy security becomes a crisis measured in hours, not weeks. That's why American aircraft are here at all. In this fictional scenario, regional tension has been building for 6 straight days. A sanctions announcement, harassment of commercial shipping, a drone flyby over a destroyer, a warning shot fired at an unmanned surface vessel. No full war, not yet. Just the kind of incremental pressure campaign that tempts decision-makers into believing they can control the edge without falling off it. Inside an underground command facility outside Bandar Abbas, the Iranian calculation seems elegant. Hit a U.S. aircraft over the strait with a dramatic high-speed shot. Not a base, not a city, not a carrier. A military aircraft in transit, exposed over international waters. Follow it with a supporting package of 8 land attack cruise missiles and 16 one-way attack drones launched from dispersed coastal points and islands. Create confusion, saturate the air picture, force the Americans to defend everywhere at once. Then step in front of the cameras and claim defensive action in response to provocation. Politically sharp, militarily deniable enough to muddy the first hour. That's the theory. They think the geometry favors them. They think proximity favors them. They think the strait's cluttered radar environment, commercial traffic density, and compressed timelines will make response slow and disjointed. They think one spectacular kill will fracture deterrence and prove the U.S. security umbrella has seams. But there's a problem with their plan. What they didn't account for is that modern American defense in this region is not one radar, one ship, one pilot, or one base. It is a mesh, space-based warning, airborne surveillance, shipborne Aegis combat systems, passive electronic support measures, data links stitching fighters, escorts, command centers, and batteries into one moving picture. They planned a strike. They triggered a network. At 05:14:13, and the launch plume is flagged by space-based infrared sensors. At 5:14:18, the Q is routed through the regional air defense architecture. At 5:14:26, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer south of the strait elevates its spy radar and begins refining track quality. At 5:14:31, the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting farther south classifies the event as a probable ballistic threat. At 5:14:39, Warning tones flood the cockpits of the escorting fighters. 4 seconds. That's all it took from launch detection to the first wave of human awareness. Now you're there. Heart rate spikes. Your kneeboard slips half an inch against your flight suit. The calm voice in your headset is suddenly different. No chatter, no extra words, just battle language. Vampire Ballistic. Vampire Ballistic. Break south now. The P-8A rolls hard. For an aircraft that size, it feels violent. The pilot dumps altitude and turns off the predicted threat axis. The Super Hornets split wide, one pair climbing to build missile kinematics, the other pair descending to guard against whatever else might be coming. Because experienced crews understand the oldest truth in missile warfare. The shot you see is rarely the only shot. At 5:15:02, the second part of the Iranian plan begins. Low-flying cruise missiles come off mobile launchers near Bandar-e-Jask and the Keshem coastline. Shahed-type drones rise from concealed positions farther inland, slow and cheap, meant less to kill than to clutter, distract, and force the defenders to spend expensive interceptors on disposable threats. One missile, then 8, then 16 drones, then the sky starts to fill. Could you separate decoy from kill chain in that moment? But could you decide which track matters most when every symbol on the display is moving and every second you hesitate compresses the next decision? This is where training stops being a slogan and becomes survival. The ballistic threat remains the priority. It is descending fast, maneuvering slightly in terminal phase, its seeker in this fictional scenario trying to reacquire the U.S. patrol aircraft as the target basket shifts over open water. But the Qadr family airframe was never designed for this kind of precision anti-air mission. It can be modified. It can be dangerous. It cannot be magical. The faster it dives, the smaller its correction window becomes. The more the target maneuvers, the more the geometry punishes the attacker. At 5:15:21, the destroyer's Combat Information Center reaches firing solution. At 5:15:24, on 2 SM-6 missiles erupt from the forward cells. You hear nothing from where the Poseidon is turning because the interceptors are still miles away, but on the destroyer, every sailor feels it through steel. Vertical launch, thunder in a box. The SM-6 is exactly the kind of weapon this moment was built for. Speed, reach, active terminal guidance, and the flexibility to hit air-breathing threats and certain ballistic targets inside the atmosphere. Not a guess, not a prayer, a calculated shot at Mach numbers that leave no room for ego. The first SM-6 climbs and arcs. The second follows 1.8 seconds behind. Standard doctrine, redundancy over regret. The intercept window is brutally small, 5:15:47. One of the Super Hornet pilots catches it first, a flash high ahead, sharp white against morning blue. Then the radio call. Splash Ballistic. Splash Ballistic. The modified Qadr breaks apart in a spreading cone of fire and metallic debris 38 miles from the Poseidon. Fragments rain harmlessly into open water. The centerpiece of the Iranian gamble lasts 94 seconds from launch to destruction. But the engagement is not over, not even close. Because while one layer wins, the lower layers are just beginning. The cruise missiles are skimming now, weaving along coast-hugging routes in maritime clutter, trying to approach from split bearings. Their hope is simple. Force the escorts to stay defensive. Force the Americans to choose between protecting the patrol aircraft and shielding shipping lanes, and maybe let one missile punch into a tanker or a U.S. hull hard enough to transform a failed ambush into a regional crisis. They thought speed at the top and volume at the bottom would overwhelm the response. What they overlooked was system integration. While the ballistic intercept unfolded, the rest of the kill web was already moving. An EA-18G Growler begins jamming known data link bands and fire control frequencies associated with coastal targeting nodes. The E-2D stitches, radar returns into a cleaner track picture. The destroyer hands targets to another escort positioned deeper in the Gulf of Oman. F-35As launched from Al-Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates are already inbound, sensor fused and silent, extending the detection basket. At Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar, crews are sprinting across concrete toward armed aircraft under floodlights not yet switched off from the night cycle. In Bahrain, the 5th Fleet command floor is lit by giant displays, every track color-coded, every change marked, every person in the room aware that a single bad minute can become a war. Now shift perspective. From the Iranian operations room, the feed looks better than it really is. Multiple tracks, American aircraft maneuvering, civilian shipping scattering, Operators convince themselves that Qadr means success. This is the most dangerous moment in any military operation, the space between launch and truth, when people see what they want to see. 5:16:10. The first cruise missile dies. An F/A-18E fires an AIM-120D from beyond visual range, using cueing fed through the network rather than its own radar alone. The missile meets the inbound low flyer over open water and shreds it into incandescent fragments. 5:16:22. Neither second and third are engaged by ship-launched SM-2s. 5:16:41. A fourth slips lower, trying to hide and see Qadr. An F-35A drops just enough altitude, picks it up with sensor fusion, and cues another fighter for the shot. 5:16:49. Kill. The drones keep coming. Slow, noisy, cheap. Weapons designed to drain patience as much as magazines. That's why the defense changes texture. You don't waste premium interceptors if you can help it. A destroyer uses ESSMs on the densest cluster. One Super Hornet shifts to cannon on a straggler that wanders into visual range. A helicopter launched from a nearby escort vector checks surface contacts for possible follow-on fast boat threats. Layer by layer, wave by wave. High-end missiles for high-end danger. Lower-cost kills where possible. Controlled violence. Minute 3. Ballistic threat eliminated. Minute 4. 4 cruise missiles destroyed. Minute 6. 2 more cruise missiles down, 9 drones splashed. Minute 8. Another 5 drones gone. 1 crashing into the sea after jamming corrupts its navigation. Minute 11. Last cruise missile intercepted 17 miles from a commercial tanker lane. Minute 13. Final 2 drones destroyed by combined naval gunfire and fighter engagement. Final tally, 1 modified Qadr launched at U.S. aircraft, 8 cruise missiles launched, 16 drones committed, 25 total hostile weapons, 25 neutralized, 0 U.S. aircraft lost, 0 ships sunk. Strategic outcome, total failure. Less time than your lunch break, and a regional coercion play has collapsed in public. But this is where people misunderstand modern deterrence. Defense is not the end of the story. Sometimes defense is the legal, political, and operational trigger for the next phase. At 5:27 local, the attack assessment is complete enough for action. The U.S. military doesn't need perfect information to know what just happened. Launch origin points are mapped, radar emissions are logged, communications nodes have been geolocated, the firing chain exposed itself the second it came alive. And because the strike targeted U.S. military aircraft in international transit and endangered civilian shipping, response options move up the ladder fast. In this fictional scenario, authorization comes through on a compressed timeline. Not emotional, not theatrical, cold, deliberate. The objective is not regime change, not a general invasion, a punitive. In contained Counterstrike aimed at immediate military capability denial. Launchers, coastal radars, drone pads, command relays, and missile support infrastructure directly tied to the attack. This is where the ratio becomes brutal. For every one of theirs, more than 2 of ours in the opening counterwave alone. But the comparison is more important than the count. They fired for spectacle. The United States fires for dismantlement. A Virginia-class submarine already in the Arabian Sea receives execute orders and launches Tomahawk Block 5 missiles toward fixed radar and command nodes near Bandar-e-Jask and Bandar-e-Bas. An Arleigh Burke destroyer adds its own salvo, targeting coastal surveillance radars on Qeshm Island and communications relays supporting the missile brigade. From the carrier strike group to the south, EF/A-18E/F Super Hornets and F-35Cs launch with AGM-88E AARGMs for air defense suppression and joint standoff weapons for hardened sites. From Al-Dhafra, additional F-35 is pushed north with SDBs and standoff precision weapons. Tankers reposition. Electronic warfare broadens. Cyber effects, unseen but felt, begin degrading localized command traffic. Could you make that call if you were sitting in the command chair? Stop at defense and hope deterrence holds? Or strike quickly enough that the same launch crews never get a second chance? The first Tomahawks arrive low and nearly invisible, terrain following over the coast before climbing just enough to hit. A radar site on Qeshm goes dark in a blossom of dust and orange flame. Seconds later, a communications hub near Bandar-e-Jask is ripped open, our antennas collapsing like wire grass in a blast wave. Then the air defense suppression package hits. ARGMs home on active emitters the way sharks find blood in water. Iranian crews face the oldest and cruelest dilemma in modern air defense: radiate and die, or shut down and go blind. Many choose too late. By 5:41, 3 known coastal surveillance radars are out. 2 mobile cruise missile launcher sites are struck before reload. A drone support compound near the mainland coast burns, secondary explosions walking through stacked munitions. A hardened operations bunker outside Bandar-e-Jask survives the first impact but loses power, then ventilation, then communication. Not a battle, not a test, a calculated demonstration. And still the strike continues, because modern militaries do not just punish the finger that pulled the trigger. They target the hand, the eye, the nerve, and the workshop behind it. 602. F-35's Q follow-on weapons against revetments containing additional launch vehicles. 607. Carrier aircraft crater access roads feeding the missile battery sector. 611. A second Tomahawk wave hits fuel and maintenance points linked to the coastal unit. 618. Imagery confirms the collapse of a key command relay mast and destruction of multiple transporter erector launcher positions. The logic is systematic. Kill the sensors so they can't find. Kill the launchers so they can't shoot. Kill the relays so surviving crews can't coordinate. Kill the support sites so even preserved weapons can't be readied quickly. Not revenge, future capability denial. From the enemy's view, the illusion of control evaporates in stages. First, the triumphant expectation after launch. Then confusion as the ballistic kill feed disappears. Then disbelief as crews and drone tracks vanish one by one. Then terror as return fire hits not one symbolic point, but the architecture behind the attempt. That's the real flaw in coercive missile theater against a technologically superior opponent. If you fail to land a decisive first blow, you may simply illuminate your own network for destruction. By 6:28, the main combat phase is over. Duration from first launch to final, confirmed U.S. strike in this fictional scenario, 74 minutes. In 74 minutes, a regional power tried to bloody American air presence over the Strait of Hormuz, failed to score a meaningful hit, and lost key elements of a coastal strike complex it spent years building. 25 hostile weapons launched. 125 intercepted or neutralized before impact. U.S. counterstrike weapons employed, 58 across sea and air platforms in the initial punitive response. Confirmed target sets disabled or destroyed, 11 major sites, plus supporting launch positions and relay nodes. U.S. casualties, none killed in the initial attack. Civilian shipping losses, none. Strategic messaging effect intended by the attacker, inverted. That last point matters most, because the Strait of Hormuz is not just water. It is psychology. Insurance premiums, tanker routing, commodity prices, alliance credibility, and public perception all move with the belief that someone controls escalation. The side that survives the opening exchange gets a vote. The side that restores order fastest gets a louder one. For sailors on the destroyers, by aviators in the cockpits, and analysts staring at live feeds from Qatar, Bahrain, and the Gulf, this wasn't abstract strategy. It was compressed mortality. Real people in real machines making decisions in windows smaller than a traffic light cycle. You're in that cockpit. Warning tone in your ear. Sweat between your shoulder blades. You know a missile launched for you. You also know the only thing separating you from becoming a headline is a chain of strangers. Sensor operators, radar crews, weapons officers, maintainers, coders, commanders, doing everything right at once. That is the lesson. Modern warfare at the edge of a choke point is no longer about a single platform being stronger than another. It's about who sees first, connects fastest, filters truth from clutter, and turns defense into controlled offense before the enemy can reset. Information dominance, layered defense, disciplined escalation. That's what decided this hypothetical fight. Not rhetoric, not bravado, not the first launch. And there's a darker lesson too. A state under political pressure, convinced it can stage manage escalation with a dramatic but limited strike, may discover that precision coercion is a myth when the opponent's response network is faster, deeper, and less confused than expected. They believed one missile over the strait would force hesitation. Instead, it invited exposure, a fatal miscalculation measured not in speeches, but in destroyed radars, burning launchers, and a coastline suddenly blind. So ask yourself this. In the next real crisis around Hormuz, the South China Sea, the Baltic, or the Red Sea, what matters more, the weapon that launches first or the network that survives longest? How does this change your view of modern warfare? Share your take. Subscribe to join the discussion.